Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President and Chief Technical Officer, Products, CloudHealth, VMware, Joe Kinsella.
Thank you and welcome. Just one moment. Sorry. It's been over 10 years since we started the journey into the cloud. And take a moment and look around at the incredible heights that all of us in this room have scaled over the last decade. We've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used by technology companies to a world in which the cloud is now used by almost every enterprise across the globe. We've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used for development and test workloads to a world in which most workloads running in the cloud today are actually running in production. We've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used for infrastructure as a service, an incremental innovation on top of Type 1 hypervisors that VMware introduced to us in 2001, to a world in which the cloud is increasingly used for rich platform services around machine learning and functions as a service. And we've come from a world in which most organizations had a single cloud, often VMware or Amazon, to a world in which it's common now for organizations to have multiple public clouds, multiple private clouds, and SaaS portfolios that number in the hundreds. And we've come from a world in which almost all of our applications were deployed using some variation of the client-server model with the operating system at its core, to a world in which today most new applications are deployed using microservices, leveraging containers, and using platform services. And this one I know quite personally, which is we've come from a world in which venture investors would not invest in the cloud for fear that the enterprise would not adopt, to a world in which today most venture investors have portfolios that are stocked with both SaaS and cloud companies. It's easy to look at everything that we've accomplished over this last decade and just assume that we must be at the summit of cloud computing. But I'm here to tell you, as we stand here in November 2019, we're at base camp, having achieved great heights, but yet with 13,000 feet of sheer rock to climb before we achieve the full promise of cloud computing. And so what I'd like to do with you today is I'd like you to grab your ice pick, strap on your crampons, and let's take a little tour a little further up the cloud. I'd like to have you take a look with me at some of the challenges that coming with scaling in the cloud and some of the solutions that you can bring to your organization to solve these challenges. So it's well understood today why most organizations go to the cloud. The powerful cocktail of consumption-based pricing, of on-demand infrastructure, globally available data centers, of third-party management, of rich platform services, combine to give us an innovation and agility that we've never had before. But this innovation and agility comes at a cost that we often don't admit and discuss. And this cost is complexity. In fact, while it's easy for many organizations to deploy their first workloads to the cloud, this increases in friction as you scale. In fact, it's not uncommon for customers to say that it's easier to scale in their traditional data center technologies than it is in the cloud. And so why is this? When you step back for a moment and you look at it, it really is based on three core reasons. The first is the pace of change in the cloud, which is the cloud moves at 4 to 5 orders of magnitude faster than anything that's been running on traditional data center technologies. This means that if you're running a business service inside your data center that might see 4 to 5 changes per month that might impact cost or might impact security, that same business service built for the cloud will likely see 4,000 to 5,000 changes per month, and in some cases 40,000 to 50,000 changes per month. It's a staggering increase in pace of change, one that the existing products were not built to solve for. And this pace of change is really driven by a fundamental change in the architectural models we're using in the cloud and a fundamental shift in our relationship with infrastructure. We now build, design, deploy, operate, and manage in a fundamentally different way in the cloud than we did inside our data centers. Second reason for why this complexity is increasing is the decentralized management that occurs with the cloud, which is most traditional technologies that have been brought into the data center are actually both adopted and managed by IT. That's not true with the cloud. In fact, when I meet an enterprise customer, it's very common not just to see the cloud being managed in dozens or hundreds of places. It's increasingly common in large enterprises to see the cloud being managed in 1,000 or more places, in teams, in departments, in lines of business. That means that these enterprises are walking around every day in a world in which an individual in one of those teams could make a change that could cause a cost overrun, could expose the business to a security risk, or could impact your service level for a business service. A third reason for this increase in complexity is the adoption of what I like to call pervasive multi-cloud, which is just a few years ago when I would talk to a CIO of an enterprise, I would ask, what clouds are you using? And that CIO almost always came back with one or two answers, which usually included VMware and/or Amazon. That same CIO today is not living in such a simplistic world. They typically have multiple public clouds, multiple private clouds, and rich SaaS portfolios. In other words, the overall portfolio a CIO must manage in a post-cloud world is staggering in its complexity. And this complexity is showing no sign of slowing down. In fact, every year, quarter, month, and week I have been in the cloud over the last 9+ years, it has become more complex than the previous year, quarter, month, and week. And if you look, it continues unabated, which is, we have more cloud providers, we have more types of infrastructure, we have more application architectures that we're bringing to market, and more platform services that we must adopt. All of this conspires to bring about an incredible increase in complexity. So what is it we can do about complexity? What you see here on this chart is what we call our maturity model, which is we have observed over thousands of customers in their journeys in the cloud that there's a common pattern of adoption that we see. So what you see is the bottom left represents the least mature customer. And I say that stressing the fact that when I say least mature, I mean in their management and governance of the cloud. In fact, many times when I meet customers that are on the bottom left, they're actually very sophisticated cloud customers. The upper right represents the most mature in your management and governance of the cloud. And each of these bars represents what we call an area of excellence. So you see cost and visibility as an area of excellence and automation as an area of excellence. And what we've found is together they comprise what is known today as a cloud center of excellence, or in some cases it's called a cloud business office. This is a team that's responsible for driving the cloud across the organization. All the dozens, hundreds, or 1,000 or more places where there is management of the cloud, making sure that each of those are following best practices and standards that allow you to scale successfully in the cloud. Now, some of you in the audience might be VI admins, and you might be wondering, how does this actually apply to me? And this represents one of the greatest opportunities over the next few years for VI admins, which is it's an opportunity to help your organization transform in the cloud. This path, well understood, requires expertise and knowledge in the use of the right products and tooling to be successful in growing your cloud usage. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to break this into 3 segments. I'm going to show you 3 demos of 3 products that you can use today to transform your businesses. In addition, I'd like to introduce you to 2 mountain climbers who will talk to the maturity model and their experiences with actually moving through different phases of maturity. The products we'll show today will be CloudHealth, will be Secure State, and will be Wavefront. And just for a moment, I'm sure all of you, if I ask you all to raise hands and say, do you think that VMware manages the most infrastructure inside a data center? Probably most of you would raise your hand. But most of you might not realize that VMware manages 27% of public cloud infrastructure and spend under management today. And that is rapidly increasing every day and week. Secure State, which has just launched this year, has already found and detected over 3.3 million vulnerabilities in the cloud. And Wavefront, is a platform for observability, has enabled an order of magnitude increase in the ability of customers to detect and resolve issues in the cloud. So what I'd like to do next is start with a demo. If you hold the demo for a moment. If you can hold the demo for a moment. Thank you. Thank you. So what I'd like to do next is start with a demo, which is what we're going to do is we're going to show CloudHealth. For those of you who haven't seen it, CloudHealth is a SaaS product. It allows you to actually integrate all your clouds, whether that's Azure or VMware, or it could be AWS or Google or even VMC on AWS. You can bring them into one console where you have integrated management from a single console. A very powerful product. And what I'd like to do is, for our first demonstration, is I'd like to show you cost and visibility, which is what's an example of how you can use a product like this to actually gain visibility into your environment and actually drive cost efficiencies. So let's start the demo. So when you arrive in CloudHealth, you'll see a dashboard. This is a dashboard of a program manager in a cloud business office. You can see that they're paying attention to both their multi-cloud spend as well as their performance in the cloud. You can see they're using multiple different clouds, from Amazon to Azure to Google. And you can see here that by drilling in, we can actually see a breakout of the spend. So we're spending over $3.2 million on Amazon, and you can see we're also spending a fairly substantial amount on VMC as well as Azure. So let's do a quick pivot, and we'll actually just switch to a service view. So very easy to analyze the data in CloudHealth, and at this point you're looking at every service across these multiple clouds, and you see that this particular customer is spending their most money on compute, both for Azure as well as for AWS. But you can see also that S3 is another service that's receiving a fair amount of spend, as well as you'll see networking costs are actually fairly high. So one of the powers of CloudHealth is just the ability to actually interact with this data in real time. Let's flip a different view and let's take a look at 3 different departments. So we'll go look at production. We'll take a look at engineering, finance, and marketing. Quick click, fractions of a second. You're actually looking at the spend across 3 departments, and you can see how they're using their cloud infrastructure. Now, it's worth noting we're seeing charts right now, but there's also tabular data supporting all of this, and everything is hyperlinked. So you can go from a high-level view of a charge all the way down to the individual items that make up that charge. It's a very powerful way to navigate data. What you see here is what we call a health check. Provides a 360-degree view of all the optimization opportunities across your environment. This is an Azure health check. And you can see that we're seeing savings that we can make by turning off unused infrastructure. You'll also see that there's some recommendations around tagging that we're making, as well as cost savings that you can make by actually right-sizing, and we'll talk more about that shortly. Security exposures you should be paying attention to. And it'll also show you your Azure burn down in your enterprise agreement, as well as notices around legacy VMs and misconfiguration of accounts. So let's actually go back and we'll take a look actually at the optimizations around SQL databases. And so right sizing in the cloud, it's the same thing as what occurs in your data center. It's the rationalization of supply and demand. You can right size anything. In this case, we're going to go right size these P1 SQL databases. You can see we're spending, at this point in time, $13,000 on 30 of them, or could be spending $13,000. So let's click in on this, and let's actually take a look at what we can do to optimize these databases. So you can see here that our efficiency score for this recommendation is 55%. We're spending $30,000 today. We could be spending under $13,000. We can drill into individual SQL databases. So if you don't trust the recommendation, you can actually go in and say, if I go from premium to standard on Azure, how do I know this workload's going to successfully work and support my business? And so you can see by clicking on premium, you can actually see all the metrics, particularly the most important metric being DTU, which is an aggregate metric that provides a really clear sense of capacity. We can then flip to the recommended sizing, and you can see that that workload fits cleanly within that particular target database type. So with a simple change for that one database, we'll save $435 per month. With all these changes, we can actually reduce the spend from $30,000 to $12,000. A very simple change and a rapid increase in your cost savings and your cost efficiency. Now, I say this knowing that many customers that use CloudHealth, on average, will see a 25% savings annually, and this occurs continuously because the rapid pace of change in the cloud, there's always drift and optimization opportunities, but it's not uncommon for our customers to tell us that they've saved over $1 million with individual changes that can take tens of minutes or an hour or two. This is the opportunity of cost efficiency in the cloud. So rather than have me just talk about this, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring up one of our fellow mountain climbers. And so this mountain climber really has spent her time actually focusing on that first phase in the maturity model, cost and visibility. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Lucas, the head of infrastructure and platform for William Hill, to the stage.
Thank you so much. I think if you're expecting somebody like Bear Grylls with the heading of mountain climber, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. William Hill, for those who don't know, are one of the biggest providers of sports betting and gaming providers in the UK. We employ about 15,500 people across 12 countries. The UK is our biggest market at the moment, probably represents about 86% of our revenues, but we have a presence in Europe, and through our recent acquisition of Mr. Green, we're expanding our business internationally. We've also been present in the US since 2012, and since the repeal of PASPA, we're now live in 9 states and probably expanding at quite a rapid pace. There was a point where I could remember which states we were in by the ones that had songs, but we're continuing to grow at a pace where now I don't know where that is now. I'm head of platforms and infrastructure. I look after 4 operational centres of excellence, including cloud tooling, infrastructure and network services. I also, because I had it in a previous life, run the delivery function. So I look after all the change as well as all the operations for the tech function. As you can see from the stats, we handle quite a lot of transactions, more than a few there. So our business is highly transactional and highly complex. So running a change program across the top whilst we're dealing with these types of figures is a challenge for us.
So, Sarah, if you can start by telling us what were some of the reasons why you went multi-cloud, and how's everything going so far?
So initially we thought we'd go straight to AWS native. Having been at this event last year and with the knowledge of our 700 plus applications, 12 to 13,000 VMs, it became very clear very quickly that we were not going to do that in our 18-month time frame that we were challenged to do by the business. I saw VMware Cloud and AWS demos last year, and we decided that would be the perfect fit to help us get quickly out of our data centers, but also to pipeline the services that we were exiting into AWS. So we are transforming those services across. And the great thing about the relationship between VMware and AWS is we can compartmentalize those products. We can leave some on the VMC side and some on the AWS side while we do that refactoring and transformation. And some we can just park there until we build new in AWS.
That's great. You're doing a pretty rapid migration. That must be causing your cost to spike.
Yes.
How are you managing that?
So when people talk about cloud migrations, nobody ever says that the technology is particularly difficult. They say the cost management is difficult and keep control of your costs. So we had CloudHealth in as a proof of concept just before we did our ELA. We kept that, and we are using CloudHealth to manage our costs and to optimize the services as they move into the clouds.
Outstanding. And you use both AWS natively, but you also use VMC on AWS. We saw in the demo that you can actually see and use both within CloudHealth. How is it, what best practices have you found in terms of managing both?
So standardizing tagging, getting guardrails out to the user base, providing terms and conditions for use. We've also done quite a lot of training with our product owners, with our finance teams, with our P&L owners. We're making the cost conversation part of our engagement with our cloud stakeholders.
Outstanding. I like to call that raising the cloud cost IQ across an organization, which is an essential part of actually maturing. What's next with CloudHealth?
We need to get the VMC costs in, and then we will just be handing that out to our operations teams and continuing that training and that education across the business.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
So in this first section, we had a chance to actually see cost and visibility in CloudHealth. So you got your first chance to see CloudHealth in action. And we got a chance to actually talk with our first mountain climber. What I'd like to do next is actually drill a little further into governance and security. In fact, specifically, what I'd like to do is focus on security here, which is one of the great worries that many of us have is that combination of that rapid pace of change with the fact that we have very decentralized management in the cloud results in this risk that you are exposed to every day. And one of the things you'll see it regularly. If you pick up the Wall Street Journal periodically, you'll actually see some company on the front page, and it will be talking about their exposure in the cloud. Then when you step back, why is that? Is the cloud somehow inherently less secure than our internal data centers? The answer is no. In fact, I think most people generally would agree today that the cloud is actually inherently more secure. So is it that these companies aren't implementing best practices and standards around security? And I can tell you with firsthand knowledge of several of them that the answer is yes, they are. They're actually highly secure in how they're approaching the cloud. So what's going on? It's really simple, which is with decentralized management, rapid pace of change, it's really hard to actually make sure that you are not making changes day to day that could adversely impact your security. And so what's the solution to this? The solution is found in a product called Secure State. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to the product today. It was launched this year. The product is has a unique take on configuration, security, and compliance. And what it does is it does real-time monitoring of all of your resources in the cloud and builds a model of those resources in the cloud to allow it to understand not just what resources and how they're all interconnected, but also how changes are impacting those resources. So what this does is this lets you not just find the primary threats and the primary issues that you can find in your environment, but it finds the harder to detect downstream impact that occurs when you actually move quickly in the cloud. So with that said, what I'd like to do is start a demo of Secure State. So what you'll see here is Secure State dashboard. You can see that we have 876 violations across this customer. We have 242 rules that we're proactively monitoring continuously. You can see a breakout of the violations that we found based on severity. One of the great powers of Secure State is it's a SaaS product. It's easy to deploy and allows you to actually very quickly identify issues across your environment. Let's actually switch and we'll go to a by group view in Secure State. And so this is a breakout that you can organize by service or by rule or by severity. In this case, we're looking at accounts by service. And you can see that there's actually a fairly large number of high severity issues around RDS across several of our accounts. And what we can do here is we can then drill into a specific issue. So this right here is our compliance dashboard. Allows you to get a real-time sense of your compliance to GDPR, SOC 2, HIPAA, PCI, as well as CIS. If we click into a finding at this point in time, we'll go and we'll look at one specific issue. In this case, we're going to look at a EC2 instance that's sharing a SSH key. And so this is really the power of secure state. You're actually seeing the entire set of relationships for this violation, not just where the violation occurred, but everything around it and how it's interconnected together. And so in this case, we can see there's an SSH key, an IAM role, there's a policy. We can see it's all connected to a set of internal EC2 instances, which by itself is not something that you need to be concerned with. Everything seems fine there. So it's an example of something that you might overlook. But if you look, that same SSH key is being shared by not just those internal EC2 instances, but by instances that are actually connected to an internet gateway and are actually public-facing properties that expose your business to risk. Great example of how you might overlook such a simple configuration change, but it also represents at the same time a great threat to your business. One of the other great powers of secure state is you can see the risk score up there, shows a risk score of 96, which is it's really the only product in the market that provides a native public cloud risk assessment, and this risk assessment is actually based on how connected that infrastructure is, how central it is to your business service. So with that said, what I'd like to do next is I'd like to actually bring up our second mountain climber, someone who uses both secure state and CloudHealth in their environments and has deep experience with the security as well as is pioneering into governance as we speak. So please join me in welcome Johan Amaray, Virtualization Manager at Discovery.
Thank you. So maybe just to set the scene quickly and explain to everybody what Discovery does and who we are. Discovery is a South African-based organization in financial services space. We started over 25 years ago with a primary, private healthcare solution and then scaled out into other business units and more lately also eventually into the banking space. But we have one thing at mind and one thing that we work towards, and that's where we come in as an IT space, is all about the customer and how do we enhance and protect people's lives at the same time making them healthier. Now you might want to think like, where do we play into this space? And the next slide will probably show you a bit of detail and try and set some context around it. For us, we have a very small team. We have 7 people. I'm one of the 7 people. And we look after an estate of just over 8,000 servers or instances worldwide. Also, a rapid scale in accounts from AWS perspective up to 52 in 11 different regions. And all of that infrastructure supports the 52 or the 22 countries that we operate in with just over 11,000 or 11 million members. The problem started for us, as you can look on the slide, is that we started our journey into the AWS cloud space in 2012 with one account. And it was a small, gradual growth. However, in 2017, there was a rapid jump in adoption in cloud accounts. Now, if you can imagine, as a VI admin looking after vSphere products from the ground up, ending up with 15 different product sets, and then have to also look after things like AWS and Azure, it becomes quite a complex problem that we have to solve. Hence, looking at solutions like CloudHealth and Secure State. Joe, I don't know if that gives you an idea as to why we got here.
That's excellent. You're scaling so rapidly in the cloud. How is it that you keep costs under control?
I think that's part of the problem for us. So with 1 or 2 accounts, it's probably easy to look at your spend and have access to this, but giving the rest of the business access to the relevant detail and information was key for us. With the 52 accounts under control right now, and that is going to keep on scaling, we had to find a better way to get a single view that we can expose to our teams internally and also our customers to enable them to understand where their spend is. Fortunately for us, CloudHealth was very quickly to be onboarded, and good to say that in the first 5 months, we've achieved up to a 40% savings or downward trend in our AWS and cloud spend, which was very good for us.
That's a staggering reduction in spend. Any tips to impart from that experience?
Well, we started out with 2 things. It was cost and security. Security was key for us. We had to look at what is our posture, where we are able to produce reporting for businesses, allow them to see how well we are performing in the cloud space. And like I mentioned, visualizing the cost. Things like, which is very easy, and at a multi-cloud account perspective, things like reserved instances, which is great to consume, again, on a per account base, it's quite difficult to get your head around how do you do this on a day-to-day base. CloudHealth has got a feature called RI Exchanger, which allows us to rapidly see at a click of a button what our posture is like, where we can optimize and scale and save more money from a spend perspective.
So you use both CloudHealth and Secure State. So let's take a moment and just talk about the security side of this, which is, at what point did you decide that you needed to bring in a product to actually help manage compliance and security in the cloud?
I think with the adoption of cloud services, business is constantly asking us to tell us how well are we performing in the cloud space. Cloud is daunting because security is a big problem. And we all know that the security posture and the security operational practices in cloud is not the same as it is on-prem, or we would like to make it look like that, but it's not. So we got asked for reporting and metrics to show to our business that we are actually in a good space and we are secure and they can go to cloud with confidence. Now, generating reports like that wasn't easy, and it's a tedious task to kind of produce this on a day-to-day basis and correlate all the data to show them visually what it is like.
That's excellent. What are your next steps in terms of maturing your use of CloudHealth and Secure State?
I think by having both products operational right now and giving people the visibility, we have now actioned the task that's shown to us. We had this task of how do we optimize better and get a better posture. So small things like automating processes. Same as Sarah, we wanted to set some guardrails so we can tell business what can and can't be done. There's fantastic features and the option to reduce cost even daily in an automated fashion. Things like setting a policy that reduces or removes unattached EBS volumes. It's a small thing, however, every one of those items brings the cost down. In the security space, we are after things like self-remediation, focusing on how do we get a better posture on a continuous basis, integrating our pipelines into things like Secure State.
Yeah, this is something that we see across our customers, which is as you begin to scale, you need to get the signal-to-noise ratio right, and to do that, you actually need to start to automate the outcomes that you want to occur.
That's correct.
So, Johan, thank you for your advice, and thanks for talking to the audience.
No problem. Thanks, Jeff.
So what we've done next is we had an opportunity to actually see governance and security in action, specifically security with Secure State. Johan was kind enough to talk to us about his experiences in this area. But what I'd like to do next is actually expand on something that Johan talked about, which is he talked about governance and being able to automate outcomes. So let's take a look at a demo of actually removing the EBS volumes that was discussed by Johan. So let's start the demo. What you'll see is we're back in the health check in CloudHealth. And what you'll see is there's a set of 25 unused EBS volumes. As I mentioned before, when you're in the health check, everything's clickable and brings you to the exact place you need to go take action. So let's actually scroll over and let's actually go look at the underlying policy. So here's an unattached EBS policy. We can drill in and you can get a sense of what it would take to go automate the termination of unused EBS volumes. So we edit, and you'll see all of our policies have a very similar look and feel to them, which is, in this case, we're targeting EBS volumes. You can see the conditions that we're looking for, which has been unattached for 1 week, and the action we would like to take, which is we'd like to automatically delete this. Now, let's start from the beginning, and actually let's construct our own policy and show you how easy this actually is to do. So we'll go in and we'll create a policy around identifying zombie infrastructure. And we'll target, in this case, EC2 instances. This is what's often called a lights on, lights off policy. We're going to have it run at a predefined period of time, and we'll actually target non-production environments, and specifically development and staging. And what we'll do is we'll actually define the conditions of what represents underutilization. And so we'll choose CPU and memory as reflective of underutilization in our non-prod environments. Now, a lights on, lights off policy, some customers will actually set them to do shutdowns at the end of the day and startups before their engineers come in the morning. There's a number of different ways you can configure this. In this case, what we're going to do is when we see low utilization across our non-prod environments, we're just going to go ahead and stop those instances, and we can start them up at a later time. So you see here, we're going into an approval workflow. It's one of the unique things about CloudHealth is you can actually put a gatekeeper between you and the actual change you're going to go make. We choose to stop, and what we can do at this point is we can actually go in and choose to test this rule and see what changes would take effect if we ran this right now. You'll see it comes back with a set of EC2 instances, and we can actually click and drill into those EC2 instances and see how they're utilizing different resources. So you can see automatically in your environment, CloudHealth will gather and normalize all the key metrics for your workloads: CPU, memory, disk, I/O, network traffic, etc. And you can use these to actually do not just right sizing, but you can actually use it in your policies as well to actually drive changes. So these metrics are actually coming from Wavefront. If you're not familiar with Wavefront, it's the premier observability platform. Most people think of monitoring. Monitoring allows you to actually choose to pull in selective metrics, but observability really is a change in this thinking to bring in all the telemetry you need for an application or a workload and then use it day to day to actually drive changes. This is actually the dashboard for Kubernetes. Comes out of the box. You can see 5 clusters, 17 nodes. You can very quickly see how these are mapped onto different clusters and the underlying utilization of those resources. Again, this comes out of the box with no configuration, and you can go ahead and configure this specific to your environment. And it highlights things like an unusually high number of terminated containers. So let's drill into the nodes. You can see here, we very quickly can drill into anything. We can see that there's a EC2 instance that is actually running high utilization, single click, and very easy to actually go identify this. In addition, you can actually see that we've identified within the containers the use of an application called Redis. So that's one of the great powers of Wavefront, is that it actually does the profiling of the underlying applications and then pulls all that telemetry in. It's a fundamental shift in how you should think about monitoring, and it's a key component to this 3 legs of the stool of how you actually drive and scale successful strategies in the cloud. Okay, great. We'll go next. Excellent. So over the last 30 minutes, we actually had a chance to see 3 demos. We've crossed between CloudHealth, Secure State, as well as Wavefront. We've actually had a chance to meet 2 customers who actually have direct experience in sliding right in their maturity model. It can be a daunting task to sit there in the room and look at all that you need to accomplish to actually achieve the right side of the maturity model. And I say this to all of you, which is, at VMware, we have a simple but profound vision, which is our mission is to take management of the cloud from a model that relies exclusively on labor and people and tools to a world in which we can rely on smart software that continuously optimizes based on your business objectives. We seek to take our customers from a world where they take great risks to run at cloud speed and achieve that desired innovation and agility, to a world in which they can actually run at cloud speed with confidence. We seek to take our customers from a world in which they're looking at disconnected clouds and disconnected portfolios of products to a world in which they can manage them cohesively, holistically from one place. In short, our mission is not finished until we summit with you in the cloud and allow you to actually take advantage of the full power of cloud computing. So, as someone who's been in the cloud at scale for almost a decade now, I frequently get asked, well, I understand I can use CloudHealth and I can use Wavefront and I can use Secure State and I can follow your maturity model, but what else is there? What's the core thing I need to know to be successful in scaling in the cloud? And I've given over the years the same answer, which is really you need 2 simple things. First, you need to have superior products that are purpose-built for the cloud. Products that are designed to run at cloud speed and provide you and all of your teams the information they need to be successful scaling in the cloud. Second thing you need, though, is often overlooked, which is you need a superior partner. A partner that knows that you're not looking to just purchase a SaaS product. You're looking to purchase a team with knowledge around that SaaS product that can understand your business and help you mature and be successful in fulfilling the promise of agility and innovation in the cloud. You have both of these today at VMware, and our mission is to summit with you over the next several years in cloud computing. So before I wrap, I just want to give a quick shout out, which is we're in Building 8 right now. Building 5 is down the road. We actually have Cloud City in Building 5. So in about 15 minutes from now, we'll actually be doing a live demo of these products that will go to another level of technical depth. So if you're actually interested, what I'd highly recommend is move on over there, and they actually are giving the first 30 people who show up some swag. So it's the white Cloud City hoodie that you might have seen around the conference. So please take the opportunity to actually go learn a little bit more about these 3 products, and I wish you great success in scaling in the cloud. Thank you.